One of the most definitive turning points for Prisma Emiya is the 3-ray art. In this art, you see a lot of things start to change, darker elements start to seep in, and the story becomes more complex than it's ever been before. One huge thing about this arc is the backstory that we get involving miyuverse Shirou, where he soloed an entire Grail war by himself and beat nearly everybody in it. And we're gonna get into that and discuss how he came to that conclusion. So in the miyuverse timeline, a timeline where Julian Ainsworth was being influenced by Darius, Julian pulled up on Shirou and Miyu when he didn't expect it, abducted Miyu. At the time, Shirou tried to stop him, but he was completely unaware at how good the Ainsworth displacement magecraft was. So when he tried to intervene and stop him, Julian straight up displaced the floor that Shirou was standing on and put the floor in the sky. So the man had Shirou outright fall on his back. Meanwhile, Shirou doesn't even know what's going on. Even after taking such a fall, he tried to follow up behind Julian, and then Angelica came and pulverized him with multiple phantasms. It was really a big realization for him how far apart their powers were, and it made him feel guilty that not only was he not strong enough to stop Julian and save Miyu, but it also felt like he just wasn't working hard enough. So after that, he wasn't finished. He took a vow. He was gonna get Miyu back for sure now. He ends up with Kirei. In fact, he's the one that healed Shirou. He's asking him for advice. He actually buys some black keys off of Kirei, which Nasu mentions in his materials that Kirei tried to run his pockets when he did so. Nasu outright stated that he charged him the same price of an entire console just for the few black keys that he bought from him. Even in the alternate timeline, my boy Kirei is out here hustling. And the reason that he bought these is because the Ainsworth Castle itself is hidden with the displacement magecraft. So given that black keys are conceptual, he was trying to figure out a way around it. And you can see different scenes like Shirou trying to force his way through the bounded field with his keys. It tells us that he was here for an entire month straight before he even considered taking another route. Yet another nod to his level of persistence. So after that event, Shirou starts to train even more vigorously than he was before. As you guys know, he had spent more time with Kiritsugu in this timeline, so he had become well equipped with his weapons. It shows us situations where he's featured with those, using everything at his disposal, and even taking a lot of tactics from Kiritsugu without outright going down the Mind of Steel path. He just took elements from him, which is very interesting considering us coming off of the back of the Emiya Alter video. So on the night that he's talking to Sakura and failing to realize that the Grail War has already started, he comes up on a situation where Sakura is outright punctured right in front of him by Shinji using the Hassan class card. Straight up gouged out Sakura's heart, and the only thing that was left behind from her was the Archer card that she was about to use to protect Shirou, which actually happened to be a dud. Julian had given her a fake, and this is how Shinji was able to get to her. So to further fuel the bitterness of Miyu being taken from him, you also had Sakura, who was taken from him right in front of his face as well. So now the feeling is less of feeling guilty and more so of him being extremely pissed off. And you will see this is when he dawns the very first appearance of him taking the Archer card and enveloping himself with the heroic spirit Emiya, which was the one that he was the most compatible with. Turns out, despite the card being a dud, Shirou still had the aptitude to override this and use himself as a catalyst for the summon. And you'll see that he has a very specific design in his version of being Emiya. He's got the bandana, and it looks just as fire in the manga. I'll never forget when I first saw it come out years ago. And you gotta understand, this is before Muramasa was a thing and had such a resilience that the moment that he took the possession of the card, he immediately started to go to town on Shinji, showing us some new moves that Emiya is capable of that we've never seen. And even when Shinji tried to raise the stakes and use his puppet colossal form to throw Shirou off, because again, again, that colossal form wasn't actually Shinji, it was a bait. Shirou was still well aware of Shinji's tactic at that moment, so when he tried to sneak up behind Shirou while he was dealing with the giant, Shirou pierced Shinji without even looking at him. He was just that aware, and it just goes to show his ability to adapt, just like Emiya, is through the roof. And what he comes to find out when he beats Shinji is that Shinji is already dead. The Matos had been wiped out long ago. Sakura was actually the last person alive before what he had done to her. And what Julian had done is place Shinji's soul in a doll, where the doll could actually take on the form of Shinji while combined with said heroic spirit. Something we would later see him do to Sakura when she was put into a doll and she was combined with the heroic spirit Lancelot. The Ainsworth Magecraft is just that effective. We've seen something similar when Ilya got captured and Angelica displaced her into a stuffed animal. Ilya has also done this to Shirou in the main timeline. And then Shirou gets into the war itself. He starts to go on a complete rampage. He beat Atrum, who was Medea's original master, while he was using her card. He beat Kaneth, while Kaneth was not only using Cuchulainn spirit, but he also had combined this with his Hydrodrome that he was using to fight against Kirisugu. So Shirou is dealing with two concepts at the same time, and he still beat Kaneth. He beat Karya while he was using the Rider card to become Medusa. He beat Zachary Ainsworth while he was using the Saber card. This was the father of Julian, putting everything on the line. And as you can see from the scenes, nearly pulling a kamikaze on himself just to secure the win. He off-screened Beatrice, who had the Berserker card, and with all of the cards in his possession, he was able to make it to Miyu and send her over to the timeline with Ilya, where at least for the time being, she'll have some chance at being safe. And that's when he faces against Angelica, who also had the Archer card, but she was combined with the spirit of Gilgamesh. Very good fight. Even before he summoned his unlimited blade works, he was putting the pressure on. His body is carved up, his skin is deteriorating just like Emiya's was said to, and you can see his hair color start to change in the middle of these transitions, and he's still fighting. He doesn't care. Mind you that he's lost his class card by this point. He's going against her card without having one. He's pulling out Ro Ayas. She's trying to slow him down with Enkidu. It's not working, and he still got off his reality marble. And then when he finally does summon UB-Dub, he just goes all out. He's using the mountain felling sword from Gilgamesh, matching all of the blows that Angelica was putting out up until the point where she used her Aya. Even with her pulling out Aya, he just emptied out his entire pool of replicas in hopes that he could at least neutralize it. It wasn't enough. And that is where Shirou finally lost. But again, it is the fortitude and the sheer will that got him there in the first place that's remarkable by any standard. I mean, when you think about it, it took Aya, one of the strongest weapons in verse, to finally bring him to a halt. That says enough in its own right. This is by far one of the strongest Shirous that we have. Some of the greatest showcases from Shirou. I wish it was longer and not just one movie, but it also made it that much sweeter to see him perform these feats all at once. Remember, he's not the protagonist. This isn't some protagonist EX powers coming to effect. Ilya's the protagonist. So he's just really like that. And reminder, prior to this war, this man had no fighting experience. It's not like Kirisugu, where he spent a life being a mercenary and then entered a war. No, the war was his training, which of course goes back to his high level of adapting. Another thing, and I brought this up before, he was 17 when he did it. Understand that this man isn't even out of his teens yet. There are grown men with a life worth of experience and background and mystic codes at their disposal, Kaneth for example, that couldn't win the war, and yet he was able to pull it off. Don't get it twisted. He still soloed the war. He still collected all of the cards and made his wish. Angelica was just there to stop him. These boys gotta step their game up.